Welcome to our Parenthood as a Spiritual Retreat podcast, where we will explore how children become our greatest spiritual guides and teachers. I am Dr. Iya Whiteley, and my background is in space and aviation psychology. Today, though, I'm delighted to welcome Stephanie, and we'll be talking about her amazing journey of transforming parenthood into a spiritual practice and a retreat. And Stephanie, thank you for finding time in this busy motherhood for joining us today. And I would love to dive into your background right after this first initial question and then we'll keep exploring your perspective on parenthood and your experience as a mother and a teacher. And if you like to discuss anything, you're most welcome. So, the first question: can you share a moment when you realized your entire perspective on parenting had fundamentally changed through this spiritual journey?
Well, first, thank you for having me. Um, I would have to say, I was driving my son to daycare. He's in there part-time. And as I pulled into the parking lot, he started to cry and say, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to school. And I think the old me would have picked him up, let him have his, tantrum as I walked into the building, gave him a hug and said, it's okay, go ahead. Um, But this time, I think I got a little bit more curious about his tantrum, or why was he resisting school? Why didn't he want to go in? And I thought, just because I'm here doesn't mean I have to step in the door. So I took him out of the car, and there's a little creek behind the daycare. And I said, "Do you want to go for a walk? Let's go for an adventure." And he said, "Okay." So, we walked and we saw flowers and trees and we were pointing things out. And then we came to an opening in the creek and we kind of, approached it and we saw two Canadian geese and their goslings. And we just stood there and watched them, and it was beautiful. And, I crouched down on his level, gave him a hug, and our faces were kind of beside one another as we were looking and just observing, the goslings jumping in and out of the water. And I just felt this beautiful, calm presence. And then we started noticing the trees, um, and the reflection of the trees in the water. And I felt like I could almost see the roots because of the reflection was so vivid. And we were just there um, in awareness and in peace. And then, he said, "Okay, up, you mommy." Like he was ready to go up and go back. So we strolled back to school or to his daycare. And there was no tears, and I brought him into the room and he happily joined his classmates. And for me, that was such a shift in perspective because um, I trusted my son that he was telling me something. I trusted myself that I can listen and that I can find the answer, and it's within me. How to care for my son. It doesn't always mean forcing them to do things. Sometimes it's respecting their pace, but also just being in nature, and learning from nature, and in the stillness of and being in that stillness and in that state of calm, um, gave us what we needed to carry forward with our day. So that for me was, something that I do weekly, and just a totally different approach that has come up, this time around.
How gorgeous. Oh, your story, I'm sure, resonates with me, certainly. Yeah, I had those moments too, when my kids did not want to go to school for some reason. And it's heartbreaking. And sometimes you don't even have time, even, to even think about it. But yes, yeah. And then just taking that a tiniest bit of time, just makes a big difference, and you go on with your day in a very different pace as well. And your child is able to just rest in you in that beautiful landscape that you described. I was there. Thank you.
Oh,
So before we go forward, let's find out about your background, about your parenting journey, so that we can understand, where do you come from and what's your experience, so we can resonate with, with you, with what you are bringing towards today.
sure. Um, I am a mom of one, one young, one young man. My son, he's 2 years old. Um, he has changed my life. Whenever I think, how does motherhood not change you, right? Um, he, his love for me, has moved me to reconsider and reassess, who I am, what's important, and how I want to carry myself through life. So, um, I recently, so I was on a maternity leave and I went back to work for 7 months, as a teacher. And then I kind of realized that things weren't quite, sitting with me in that flow of life. Um, and I decided to extend my maternity leave to spend a little bit more time with him. And that's when I joined your course because I wanted to be, intentional with my time off. I realize that you can create all the time in the world, for the people that you care about. But if you're not intentional with that time, then it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to bring the things that you want. So it's not about the quantity, it's also about the quality of the time. And I realized that I was in a headspace perhaps that, um, didn't always lend itself to being fully present with my son. And I knew I needed something to guide me along the everyday moments, um, so that my time with my son is experienced fully from my heart, and so that I'm not always in my head.
Super. Thank you. So what specific challenges were most wearing down for you at the time? So before we interacted.
Yeah, I think for me, I would get overwhelmed, with the tasks that I had to do, or I would be thinking about the future. Okay, I have to make dinner for six, so therefore I got to do this step first, this step second, or I have all these responsibilities. What's going to be the right decision? So I was always kind of, in the future, and I
Hmm.
wasn't in the present.
Hmm.
And, um, what happens is that then I miss the beauty of the relationship with my son. And it's not to say that I don't have to do those things, but by worrying about it, and not being present to the person in front of me, it's actually taking me longer to do those tasks than originally. And I realize that if I free up some of the time that I have, then decluttering, taking away the worry, that I actually have more time than I actually think if I'm in the moment with my son. And just to give you an example of what I mean, I was in the kitchen and I was making dinner, and then I was thinking about a work responsibility that's upcoming for myself, and thinking about what's the best choice, what will get, what should I do? And then my son, I feel him tugging at me, mommy, come play, mommy, come play. And I'm like, not now, Lucas. I need to do this. And I was, up here, not here. And then I remembered, some of the words of wisdom, from our time together. And you said, usually when I'm unsure of what to do, I just watch my children, and usually an answer arises. And so I have to admit, I wasn't immediate in that realization, but what I was able to do was catch myself, which is new for me. And in that catching of myself, I said, okay, Lucas, what do you want to play? And funny enough, he said, I want to play doctor. I said, okay, sure. So he told me to lie down on the couch, and I did. And he got a string and he put it on my chest like a stethoscope. And he said, breathe, mommy. And at first I chuckled, and then I started to tear up because here is this little boy um, giving me the answer that I needed. Breathe, mom. Breathe. We're going to be okay. And in so many of our spiritual practices together, also, you always remind us to return to the breath. And, we've done breath work together and, um, you know, beautiful practices. And here was my son giving me that answer again, Mom, breathe. And I slowed down and I said, okay, return to my breath. I have everything that I need that's within me, one breath at a time. And that's what will get me there. So it's that overwhelm and stuff. I'm not saying that I've completely escaped it, but what is very powerful for me is that I'm more aware of it and that I can, call attention to it. And that for me is everything. And it's a step of growth or a change in the right direction.
I've teared up, I must say. Just thinking, I know they just do that, isn't it? You're just thinking, how is playing doctor has anything to do with what I have to do? And then they just say the next thing, and you're melting down.
And it's funny that it was doctor as well. He's like, Mom needs some help here. Let me lie down, you know? So yeah,
Oh,
it was a really tender moment.
gorgeous. Thank you. And so, what do you think, or why do you think conventional parenting wisdom isn't fully resonating with, or perhaps it's maybe societal expectations? How do they differ to what we've been doing? Or how can they actually go along with each other? Maybe it's not different.
Well, I think the thing about, expectations or traditional or conventional parent wisdom is that the wisdom comes out of a specific context, time and place. And when you're in your own world, that context is not always duplicated. So sometimes we feel like we need to take everything in its entirety rather than carefully discerning what's working for us in our moment. So there could be conventional wisdom that's absolutely beautiful, and it's the answer to your prayers. And as long as you've done the discernment and you've taken it, fantastic, and it works for you. But what often happens, or at least I know what happens with me, is that you take it as the end all and be all, and then you forget to go through that process of discernment. And what I loved about our course is that it gave us the tools or reminded us of the tools that we have within ourselves to um, to make decisions that are for the betterment of our family. Um, and allows, one of my favorite images that we just discussed was the idea of a baby bird learning to fly. And I always keep that image in my mind because it helps me to um, remember that, when a mother bird is teaching a baby to fly, it's not going to let the child to leap out into danger when there's a predator, but there's a necessary or inherent, risk that needs to happen in order for the child to grow. So our job as parents, of course, is to protect our children, but also to lovingly let them take that risk or take that leap, which is necessary to fly. And I think that has helped me to discern more carefully about what is allowing my child to thrive and take risk versus what is a rule or convention that's actually inhibiting growth. And maybe it's even, wisdom that's come from, family and that kind of stuff. So, just to give you an example, um, my mom loved to have a clean house, and that was a big thing. And so things always need to be kept in the bin or put away. But, um, I realized that a little bit of a mess isn't, you know, is actually an expression of my son, and allowing him to tap into that creative flow that he has within him and stay connected to that part of himself. So sometimes saying no too often can stifle a child from growing. It doesn't mean we don't, clean up after we make a mess, but it means that I allow the process to unfold naturally. So my son wanted to play with sand, a kinetic sand in a bin, and the first thing I did say to him was, "Okay, Lucas, where does the sand stay? In the bin, okay?" Then he started to play, but then he got in the bin. So the sand was still in the bin, but he was just in it. And he took the sand and was rubbing it all over his body like he was taking a bath. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then after he had sand on his feet, and then he started saying, I'm skating because he was using the sand on his feet to glide across the wooden floor. And the old part of me would have said, okay, no, we don't make a mess. I have no boundaries. Um, I'm letting my son do whatever he wants. He's not going to learn how to behave or whatever. But after I let him play, he released whatever it is that he wanted to do. He created, he had fun. And I said, okay, Lucas, now it's time to clean. And he helped me clean. So, I did the majority of it, but the gestures were there, which was beautiful. And I think traditionally I would have been fearful of a mess, but now and that would have actually, stifled, I think, him from exploring that creativity. Now, if I just think about this, even from an educator's lens, if I fast forward to myself as a high school educator, what would those students be like if they were not continuously interrupted every time they had a creative thought? Because when play is so creative, um, and as you play, I feel like you are closer to yourself than ever because um, there's no one telling you what to do, and so allowing him to create is nurturing that skill within him. And so imagine, kids only heard no in that context when it was absolutely necessary, not, prematurely. What would our students' minds be like, or what would my students' minds be like at 15, 16, 17, or 18? So yeah, just um it certainly shifted and changed my thinking, who I am. And I think the course has a lot to offer because it's always bringing you back to yourself and allowing you to see what context, what important things are happening in your circumstance, so you can make a decision that works for the well-being and the flourishing of your family and your children.
Mm, gorgeous. It's amazing, to see all of you flourish, through this and finding your own answers, which I also found that it was difficult, just as you were describing, that there's so many contexts and so many styles in parenting, and perhaps even cultural, and yet something is not right. And you just almost, for me, it was harder to trust that what I feel is the way to go. So what you're describing is just beautiful, embodiment and integration. And so you literally already started talking about transformation. So let's go and see what other moments kind of that clicked and changed something deeper inside. And so, for example, what fears or doubts did you have about your ability to implement this approach? And how did it resolve?
Hmm. I think the fears and doubts are, always centered around, am I doing it right? Um, am I gonna mess up my son if I do the wrong thing? What are they doing? Is it better? And so, but those thoughts come from comparison. And I loved the course because it wasn't about comparison. It was about experiencing, trying, reflecting. So every week, we would come together with a new concept or a new idea, and then, we'd go out and live it. Um, and and it was beautiful because it was reframing or changing my awareness of kind of how I was living. So the fear of how it kind of, I guess, extinguished the fear um, was through trying and trusting. Um, so what do I mean by this? Like my son, um, he sometimes gets again he's two, so the tantrums come up, but sometimes he doesn't want to listen and he doesn't want to put on his coat. Um, and with his coat, he's struggling with this and that, and I'm like, okay, what is my son telling me here that he doesn't want to put on his coat? Well, he lives very much in the moment, so he's in the house. Why would he want to put on a coat? He's comfortable. And then, part of the fear kicks in. Sometimes it's like, well, if I take him out with a coat, what are parent people going to think that I'm the bad mom who doesn't make her son bundle up for the Canadian weather? But, their conversations help me to realize that there is a trust and a need, and our children are teaching us something about themselves and also something that we should probably do as well. But anyways, in the context of this, um, what I did was I told my son, okay, you don't have to put your coat on, but I brought it with me. We went outside. Within a couple of minutes, he asked for his coat because now he realized it's cold and he's living very much in the moment. And the fear also dissipated when I realized that in that example of my son listening to his body, that it is such a beautiful lesson. Um, because how many times do we not listen to our own body? Um, that how many times do I work when I'm exhausted? How many times do I ignore feelings thinking that they're going to go away? How many times do I feel disconnected from my body? Maybe I'm up in my head, the fear, oh, what are they going to think? Rather than in here and feeling it. And, just because we ignore it doesn't mean things are going to go away. So when I see my son listening to the wisdom of his body, that he knows I'm inside, it's warm, I don't need a coat. Now it's cold, now I can listen to my body. I'm going to ask for the coat and put it on. That in itself, when you see the wisdom of the situation, you're like, oh, why would I ever be scared of that? Things kind of resolve, the worries and fears kind of just dissipate when you see that my son can make choices for himself, that he's listening to his body, and it's beautiful. And that, in fact, that I should probably do more of that. That I should listen to my body more and rest when I need it, and move my body when I feel like it. So when you throughout the course of the week, as you continue to guide us in different topics, these kind of attunements or awarenesses start to unfold. Um, they're within us in the sense that now I heard it, we discussed it. Now I'm going to try it in my life, and the answers just come. Like I don't know how to explain it. It's like I don't need to be afraid because look how beautiful. Look how beautiful life is unfolding. Why would I be afraid of this remarkable thing? Of the wisdom in my child and of encouraging him to trust himself and become himself. And I'm not making a mistake. I'm actually doing what is right in the moment. So it's just what.
Gorgeous. Gorgeous. Yeah, this coat example, or, dressing for the occasion that we know, but they don't know yet. I think it's every parent experienced this at some point. Wonderful. So, for example, why is viewing parenthood as a spiritual retreat is accessible, if not for all parents, but to most, regardless of their background.
It's accessible because, as you continuously remind us, we have everything that we need within us. Um, it's also accessible just, also, if I have to say from a pragmatic point of view, um, the timing of the course and the pacing is absolutely fantastic. We have a lecture that we can, it's an hour. Sometimes I go for a walk with my son in the stroller and I listen to the lecture, uh, and and then we meet and we have some me time. That me time that I have, that hour that that we come together, is actually regenerates more energy for me to go out and be a mother. Um, it's accessible because it's not extra work. It's integrated into what I'm doing on a daily basis. Um, we discuss and explore, and then I go and get to live and come back and reflect on my living and how I'm making subtle shifts in how I approach things. And so it's accessible well, the design is accessible, but also the tools that we have. It's not like I need to crack open a textbook and start studying. The tools are within me. And so it's just taking practice to draw them out in the everyday. Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. Um, can you share maybe one example or maybe what unexpected ripple effect has this approach had on other areas of your life?
Yeah. Um, I think it has really changed the way that I view my role as educator. Um, Time and time again, I do this work with my son, that arises from this love, and that love translates into, who I am and to my teaching profession. And just to give you an example, one of the things that we talked about was um, the sacredness of questioning and how a question is a beautiful moment for growth, for uncovering, and for allowing things to unfold. And so the response to the question is just as important as the question itself. So your response to the question can create space for someone else to blossom. But if the answers are restrictive, then it could also restrict the growth of the person, who's seeking. So I never realized how, this dynamic of question and answer can lead someone closer to themselves, versus, again, if you're not thinking about how important it is, could lead someone further away from themselves. um, and so this idea of the question as sacred has changed the way I look at my classroom space and how that exchange between, student and teacher is actually quite extraordinary. Because I get many questions. Can I go to the bathroom? Can I do that? All these, types of questions. And so sometimes questions feel mundane. And I love the lens, that I was given, that it's like, wow, what a moment of trust that I'm being given, to encourage children and teens to, find themselves, that my question or my response to their question could, help them find their way. It's not just another question. Um, it's something special. So then if I think about how many questions that I'm getting asked in a day, like, wow, how sacred is my day that I have this. And I also have this openness and receptivity, right? So definitely in that realm, but also the way I parent is also, influencing how my parents grandparent, um, and seeing how I interact with my son, shifts the way that my parents, spend time. And it's funny because my mom, who was the one who loved a clean and tidy house, I heard her casually drop a few phrases like, "Oh, it doesn't matter. We can clean that later." And I was like, "What? I never got that as a kid." But it's a joy, a simultaneous joy that it's like, oh, that's a shift in her perspective, and it's beautiful to see for her, seeing her let go a little bit, and also for my son as well. So.
Oh, gorgeous. It's wonderful to see also our parents, I think, differently as well through opening something else for us. So I think, yeah, that's gorgeous. And can you share one example on how you respond differently to a situation that maybe previously was frustrating or yeah.
Yeah. So, I was on a family vacation and I was heading back to the car. We were at the beach, and so we had the cooler, the chairs, the towels, and I am carrying, my husband went to go get the car, and I'm carrying everything on my own with my son, and we're walking, and I'm like, this kid needs to walk faster. I'm about to, I don't know, melt, and this stuff is getting heavy. And I turn around and I'm like, hurry up, let's go, let's go. And then my son's saying, choo choo, choo choo. And I'm looking around and I'm looking like there is no choo choo. Where's the choo choo? So, I took a moment, a brief pause. I kind of just rested the things I was carrying down on the floor, and I realized that the choo-choo train was actually a shadow um, we were crossing a bridge, and it was the shadow from the railings of the bridge that looked like tracks on the floor. And so my son was dragging his feet and going slower because he was trying to be a choo-choo train. So it was just, I guess, taking a moment to stop and pause, to be aware. And so then a burdensome situation and a situation of frustration became a moment of laughter and joy. And recognizing that my son's creativity, and that a simple walk to the car can be actually something pleasant, and it doesn't have to be so serious all the time. So it was just a little moment to stop, pause, and appreciate. Yeah.
They do that, isn't it? They are so observant that completely misses our attention or we're just in our own space a lot of the time. And it's just gorgeous that they just pull us out and just like, look, the world is happening. Where are
Yeah,
you?
exactly. That's the question. Where are you? That's perfectly said. Yeah.
Gorgeous. Yeah, I love that. Um, so, what would you say to parents who worry that they don't have the time for a spiritual practice? And we do know that a lot of people, want to go to a retreat, they want to have time for themselves. And you partly answered this already. And we know that we have so much on our plate already. So, what would be, I mean, what would you tell them who worry that they just don't have time for spiritual practice?
I would say that the time will pass anyways. And it's up to you, how you would like to use it. And so I know I gave some of you a few examples of how um, it wasn't about adding more, it was about just shifting what was already there. So, and then in fact, I ended up having more time, because I'm in the present moment, or I'm able to catch myself more frequently, to come back to where I need to be. And so I end up having more time than needed. Um, and I think that when um, when you are changed, when you start a course and you are changed, you um it catapults things. Like when I first started taking the course, you know these little moments were less frequent. And then as I continued to dive into things and be aware and reflect, I was better at catching myself in those moments. So time isn't really, um, for me personally, especially as I continued to get immersed in it, it was never an issue. I actually found myself having more time.
Wonderful. And what did you notice in your child response, or maybe in your relationship with your son? Um, what different? I guess what's is different now?
With my son.
Yeah, like what did you notice about your child responses, or Lucas? What's his, I guess, reaction to your change? What ripple effect did it have in him?
I think that we've learned to trust each other more because he knows that I don't know, almost feel like he knows that I'm more in tuned with what it is that he needs. Um, and there's less, I guess, friction, like because I am following his pace sometimes. And obviously, there are boundaries sometimes that I need to set. And at those times, it's okay for him to cry or if he needs to get upset, but I'm there to hold him. But a lot of the day, there is less friction when I'm not carrying the expectations that don't serve our family. And so, like getting out the door in the morning is a little quicker because I don't have to force a coat. And if he doesn't feel like wearing his shoes, it's okay because I'm bringing them with us and I'm picking him up straight to the car. And then he asks for his shoes when we arrive at the place that we need it. So it's just, I actually get to the car quicker and on time. And then when I arrive, I can put on his coat and put on his shoes. It's just things get done. It's just a reordering of things and um and there's less friction in our day and then I'm more aware he's calmer and happier and then there's this kind of this trust of oh mom knows mom gets it. I don't need to throw this tantrum because I'm going to whatever she's it's going to be taken care of or I'm going to trust that this will happen. So I don't know how to describe it. It's more of connection and less again less friction, less moments of tension, more flow. I appreciate more and then of what he's doing and then it sparks his creativity or his encourages him to explore more.
Mhm.
So it's really quite beautiful the way the relationship's evolving.
And I think you almost answered my next question, but I still would like to ask. So, how has your understanding of what it means to be a good mother or parent evolved through this journey?
So obviously a little bit of what I said, but um, to be a good mother is to be more myself. The more I am myself, the more my son will flourish. All my son needs from me is to love myself, to be myself. Um, and with that, those are the conditions that are necessary for growth. The nitty-gritties will work themselves out. Um, but it is love, the love of myself, the love of my son, and creating space for this love to blossom. That to me is what being a good mom is. And that's all that's necessary for him to grow, truly. And there are expectations or rules or regulations. Sometimes they're in service of love that safety, well-being, getting a good, sometimes we need to set boundaries for kids to get a good night's sleep or to eat with proper nutrition or to not touch the thing that's going to be dangerous. Those are things that are done in love because it is safety. Um, but there are other things that don't necessarily serve that. And then focusing on this idea of love um, brings me closer to who I am and who my son is. and I can let go of those things that aren't for me, um, so that my son can, um, you know, be who he is.
Gorgeous. And now the final word, literally. And of course, you can add to it. But what is a single word uh, that what this course did for you in a single word?
Joy.
Gorgeous. Oh, Stephanie, thank you. If you feel like you want to add something, that's fine. But I so appreciate you taking the time of your day and, of course, being a mom and all the other responsibilities. And it's gorgeous that you're sharing your experience with hopefully other moms who will hear you and resonate and find something for them.
I just wanted to extend my gratitude, not only for today, but for the duration of our time together. It's truly been eye-opening and has been life-altering, has shifted my worldview. So I'm grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. Our journey is together, as you know. I'm learning too. Hence, it's a journey, a joint journey. So, thank you, everyone who joined us in this discussion. And to learn more about parenthood as a spiritual retreat, just go and find information either below this video or via the website using my name, Dr. Iya Whiteley. And until next time, remember that every parenting challenge is an invitation, loving invitation to grow. Thank you.